My name is Tyler Orion. I'm the interim president of Connect. Many of you know, and so I thought I would give you a 30-second update. Our CEO, Dwayne Roth, who is not only beloved at Connect, but honored and respected throughout the technology and life science universe, had a serious bicycle accident on Sunday. So I've been asked by the board to step in and hold down the fort. Anybody who has any idea about the way Dwayne conducts his life knows that no one human being can possibly really substitute, but I'm here in Dwayne's shoes today, and thank you all for coming. The news is hopeful, not a lot of news, but we are cautiously optimistic, and I thank those of you who have reached out, offered help, sent notes and letters and cards of support. They're all going to the family. The family's very, very appreciative, so thank you very much. And I'd like to get us started today, welcoming you all. We're going to have some pretty impressive speakers today talking about immigration reform, and particularly would like to thank Forward US, because they really have taken on a national leadership on not only the immigration policy reform issue, but also on several policy issues that are very near and dear to Connect's heart and San Diego's heart in the tech and life science community. And also, of course, I'd like to welcome Scott Peters and Marianne Pintar, and thank you for making time and being here to kind of let us know what's going on in the great, vast citadel of the East, and how we can better support reform. I'd also like to mention that there are some people in the audience this afternoon that I'd like to thank. We have representatives from Senator Feinstein's office and Congressman Ice's office and Cal State Senator Joel Anderson's office and the Consulate of Mexico, the Consulate of Canada, and the City of Chula Vista. So it's really nice to have such a great turnout from our legislative partners. So I'd like to introduce you to Joe Green. Joe is the founder of Forward US, and he is passionate about politics. Looks like he's been in politics all his life, and has worked on political campaigns at the state, local, and national level, including John Kerry's 2004 campaign. He's also been a successful social entrepreneur and entrepreneur in his own right. And I'm going to bring Joe up and let him introduce the rest of our day. And we just really appreciate your partnership. Connect is one organization that's really trying hard to make a difference in the public policy arena, but you guys are like the 800-pound gorilla, and we're delighted that you're working with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for coming. It's a great crowd in the middle of a day on a Friday. First of all, we want to give our best wishes to Dwayne for a speedy recovery, and we wouldn't be here without him. So I just want to tell you guys a little bit about Forward and what we're trying to do specifically on immigration. So we started Forward as an effort of leaders in the tech community to try to organize and to affect public policy around what we kind of consider to be a knowledge economy agenda, which I think many of us in this room work in businesses where kind of the only input that really matters is human capital. I'm the son of a math professor at sister school UCLA up the road. And I think as we transition from an industrial economy to a knowledge economy, it becomes more and more important that we are focused on policies that are about investing in human capital and maintaining America's advantage as such. And so we're really fortunate to have a lot of leaders in the tech community, from Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Reid Hoffman and John Doerr, and about 40 folks who have come together. And our first effort is really focused on comprehensive immigration reform. And we believe that immigration reform is an imperative for moral reasons, for economic reasons, and in service of our identity as a country, who we are. There's a great Reagan quote that I like to paraphrase, that you can move to France and you can never become a Frenchman. You can move to Japan or Turkey, but you can never become a Japanese or a Turk. But you can move to America and become American. I was just in South Korea last weekend, And one of the things you notice is everybody looks exactly the same. And you look around this room, and everybody does not look exactly the same. And that is a source of our strength as a country. And so what do we mean when we say comprehensive immigration reform? So we've just had a bill that the U.S. Senate has passed. We're now entering the process with the House, which I'm sure Representative Peters will be excited to tell us about. So there's three main things that we talk about when we say comprehensive immigration reform. The first thing is fixing our legal immigration system such that it better reflects the needs of our economy. So the situation we have now where we have 11 million undocumented immigrants who are living in the shadows, and we want to bring them out of the shadows. We want to create a system that we are excited to enforce. So that means having visas for different industries, from agriculture and construction to technology and startups, and really making sure that the system that we have in place for people to immigrate to our country legally reflects the needs of our country. The second is then enforcing the law. And that doesn't just mean physically at the border, it also means economic enforcement. It means giving employers an easy way to check legal identity. It means actually knowing who's in the country. One of the things I think always surprises people is that the estimate is about 40% of the people that are undocumented came here legally. They didn't jump a fence. They came in legally on some kind of visa, and they overstayed their visa. When I was just in Korea, they checked my passport on the way into the country, and they checked my passport on the way out of the country. We only check your passport on the way in. So we actually have no way to know if you've overstayed your visa. This is sort of kind of nuts. So the second thing is about enforcing the law. And then the third is about creating a path to citizenship such that folks who are undocumented have a chance to earn their right to citizenship and kind of fully participate in what it means to be an American. So that's sort of the basic overview of immigration. We think that it is achievable, hopefully this year, but it's a tough fight, which I think Representative Peters can give us more insight into. So now I want to introduce our moderator, Joe Panetta. I want to thank him for stepping in at the last minute. So Joe's the president and CEO of BIOCOM, which is the largest regional life science association in the world. Represents more than 550 member companies here in Southern California. We were chatting a little bit before, has an interesting background in both the business and policy side of things. And so we're really excited to have him moderating our panel. So I'll pass it to you, Joe.
I don't know if there's I think there's a mic up here, so maybe we'll leave this one over here for the panelists. I feel like I'm moderating an NPR presidential debate or something.
You are.
You know, I went to school in Pittsburgh, and when I was asked to step in and do this for Dwayne, I saw that Joe Green was one of the panelists. And having lived in Pittsburgh, those of you who know Pittsburgh know that Joe Green was a famous football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I came here and I met Joe Green, and I have to say, I'm most impressed with Joe Green versus the other Joe Green who I thought I was going to meet here. So it's not a disappointment being here. Okay, well, let me first of all extend, on behalf of all of us at BIOCOM, to Dwayne the best wishes for his quick, very quick return to Connect. We're going to miss him in the time that he's recovering, and he's been a great friend, and we've worked very closely as BIOCOM with Connect on a number of policy issues, and immigration is one of them. First, a little bit of housekeeping. If you could please turn your cell phones all the way down or off, that would be great. Also, I need your help. We're going to allow a good bit of time for questions at the end, and this presentation is really for you. So if you could take advantage of the note cards that the staff are going to be passing around if they haven't already, and write your questions down on those note cards. We'll collect them. And then at the end, we'll have ample time for the members of the panel to be able to address your questions. So as you heard from Joe, you're going to be hearing from a great group of panelists today. We're going to be talking about some of the difficulties of securing H-1B visas, from a policy standpoint, also how we can make it easier to secure the high-skilled workers that we need in the life science and technology industries. We'll also touch on the larger issue of STEM education in our country. We'll discuss ways that we can improve our educational system so that we can secure the talent that we need for the future on the STEM side. We rely heavily in the life science and technology industries on H-1B visaed workers and on those who have a advanced STEM degree. But one of the reasons that we're here to discuss immigration reform is that our immigration system makes it very difficult to hire the foreign talent that we need in our companies. One of the challenges that we've always had here in Southern California is that this can be a very expensive place to live. It can be difficult to import the talent that we need from other parts of the country to bring that talent here to San Diego. So we need access to every opportunity to bring the skilled talent in. That goes to H-1B visas, which have been extremely limited over the last 10 years. For example, the number of H-1B visas that were available this year for hiring was completely reached in just 5 days. So that shows you how dramatic the issue is. That means that 39,000 requests for H-1B visas were denied, and those 65,000 H-1B visas that were allocated based on a lottery system. So many of our technology companies and biotech companies are going to have to wait till next year, maybe the following year, to be able to have a chance to compete for those visas. So immigration reform is going to affect all categories of visas and our ability to bring people in here. As I said, we've been working for years on this issue. We've been working with Connect more recently on it as well to ensure especially that those foreign workers with the STEM skills that we need aren't excluded from the H-1B visa system. And we've actually been successful at working with our sister organization, BIO, in Washington, in incorporating life science degrees in the definition of STEM for both the House and Senate bills that are moving along now. I was going to talk a little bit about what's happening in Congress, but I think I'll leave that for Congressman Peters to give you a little bit more depth on it than I can possibly give it. So I'll just say that we really appreciate the work that Congressman Peters has been doing with us in the life science industry from my standpoint, and I know with the high-tech industry as well. He's our first speaker today. He's been a very strong advocate for our community in a very short period of time, just 7 months or so that he's been in Congress. He's doing a lot to ensure that our high-tech, biotech sectors are well represented in Congress. So we appreciate having Congressman Peters here on the panel today. Please come up and join us. Next, we have Matt Michelsen, who's CEO and co-founder of Backplane. Backplane is an online platform that allows people around the world to connect based upon their shared interests. Their first community revolved around Lady Gaga's LittleMonsters.com. Currently has almost 1 million people interacting. I'm going to have to check that out. I'm not sure I know what that is, but it sounds cool anyway. Backplane's goal is to power community sites for a wide range of interest groups. So Matt, if you'd come up and join us, please. And last but not least, Diego Berdakin is president of BeachMint, which is a social e-commerce startup company that lets customers subscribe to receive products handpicked by celebrities each month. Currently, there are 6 direct-to-consumer sites that offer a variety of products from jewelry to interior design. Diego, if you'd please come up and join us as well. So the complete speakers' biographies are included in your program if you'd like to read more about them. Let's kick off the program with Congressman Scott Peters, who's going to give us an update on immigration reform efforts in Congress.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks to Connect and Tyler. And again, I certainly add my voice to those wishing a speedy recovery to Dwayne. We need him. We'll miss him. It's my honor to represent this district in the United States Congress. Comprehensive immigration reform is not only important to the entire country, it's important to San Diego in particular for a few reasons. One is we have a lot of people working in the shadows in agriculture in our county and in the hotel industry and in home health care. We want to get those people out. We want to get the hotels and restaurants to be out of the business of immigration enforcement into the business of serving our tourism industry. And that just makes sense. But in particular, our economy, as Dwayne has always taught us, is driven by tourism, the military, and science and technology. And it's very important for you to be here today, Joe, because this immigration issue is really affecting our ability to compete worldwide. The ability of us to get the people we need to do the jobs we have is very critical to San Diego. So my thanks to you for coming here, and to you folks, but also for all of you coming, because your engagement's very important. I would say on the Senate bill, the one thing I would add from a San Diego perspective, if I might, is I'm a little bit, well, we are giving a lot of attention to building a large wall and doubling the number of border enforcement agents. And you could argue about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing or acceptable as part of a deal that gets you everything else you need. But the concern I have, the Chamber of Commerce's main issue here with the federal government is trying to fix our border crossing at San Ysidro. And I was just talking to Peter, who's just visited there, and the Mexican government has finished their side of the border crossing, and ours is not. It's sort of, you know, theirs comes in here, and ours kind of comes in here. We have a access road over this way, and it's really not the right way to do trade. A 45-minute delay at the border was calculated at the end of last year to cost our local economy $1 billion a year. We know delays have been 2 hours, or even on average, and even 4 hours. So we're leaving a lot of money on the table, and all the talk we have about the border, we can't lose sight of the fact that there's a lot of trade that needs to happen, and part of the wall is the door. So let's not. So Senator Feinstein has an amendment. I'll introduce the same amendment in the House to reorient some of our investment toward that trade infrastructure. The other thing is we're doubling the size of the border agent patrol, but we're not really adding customs agents. So we'll have a lot more people with sidearms, but not enough people with ledgers. So that's a San Diego perspective on this whole thing that I'm going to try to work on. In Congress, there's a lot of concern on the left about what they consider the militarization of the border, the overinvestment in infrastructure. I know that there are other ways that we might deal with it than just a wall, but that's kind of where the Senate ended up. And on the right, I know that there's still a concern about the notion of a path to citizenship. There's still a sense that I don't share that people who are here illegally are breaking the law and shouldn't be rewarded. I don't agree with that, but that's the rhetoric we hear over there. Nationally, Republicans recognize the importance of doing this. They know that if they don't start to compete for the votes of Latinos, in particular, that they may never see another Republican president for years and years. Mitt Romney did as well among white men, people who look like me, as either President Bush or President Reagan did. The problem is that the electorate is changing. So now, minorities, young people, and single women in particular make up a much larger part of the electorate, and all voted for President Obama in overwhelming numbers. And I think it's fair to say that Latinos are really looking at how we deal with immigration to decide who's on their side. And national Republicans recognize that, and I believe that Mr. Boehner in particular would like to make a deal like the Senate deal. He has, as you know, promised to observe what's called the Hastert Rule. The Hastert Rule is that he won't put anything on the floor of the House, and it's his prerogative to do so. There's no way for us to put this on the House floor, unless it enjoys a majority of the majority. So he's got to get, in his Hastert Rule, he's got to get more than half the Republicans to be for the Senate bill, say, before he puts it on the floor. I don't think he's got that. My own conversations with people and the way that congressional districts are distributed shows that there are a lot of people who in the Republican Party are more concerned about a challenge from the right than from the left politically. They don't have that many Latinos in their district, and they don't see it as a priority. So while they may acknowledge nationally that this is a priority for the Republican Party, they're not willing to sacrifice their own hide to get there. So I think that the likeliest play for us to be able to get something like the Senate bill on the House floor is to create a path of permission for Speaker Boehner to put this on the floor, maybe without the support of all of the Republicans overtly, but so that enough Democrats could vote for something that would pass. It's what happened with the Violence Against Women Act. We had one instance where there's a Violence Against Women Act that provides protections for women against violence, particularly in the workplace. It had been constantly renewed, and what happened was it came up against a problem with whether to add protections for lesbian and Native American women. And many Republicans just didn't want to do it. But it was such a difficult position to maintain that finally Speaker Boehner put it on the floor and the Democrats voted for it in sufficient numbers to carry it across. What we'd like to do, I think Senator Schumer suggested this is what the president's trying to do, is even if we could get Republicans, even if Republicans would not be willing to say, I'm going to vote for the immigration bill, they might be willing to say, I'm concerned enough about getting it past us, let's put it on the floor, I'll vote no, but you'll have enough votes to pass it and it'll be done. That's kind of the strategy. That makes the next few weeks and the next month of August very important. And again, the reason I'm going to conclude by saying Forward US is so important is that when those people go home in August, they've got to hear that this is important to you. They've got to hear that it's important to farmers. They've got to hear that it's important to tech jobs. They've got to hear that it's important to hotels, to home health care. And your organization plays a really exciting role in making that message. But so do you all. I can tell you I'm very interested in comprehensive immigration reform. I'm not someone who wants to hold it up for political reasons to try to win the next election. I'm about getting things done. That's often my line in D.C. I say, I'm from San Diego. I didn't come here for the weather. So I'm very aggressively interested in solving the Republicans' problem and getting an immigration bill. But they're going to need to hear that from you because I can't be that voice, and they're going to need to hear that from you, Joe, and groups like you. So that's my kind of intro. I think that's where it is. I'd be happy to share more about my interactions with folks, but look forward to your questions. But thanks for having me.
I've never spoken after a congressman. I kind of sit here and think, being an entrepreneur, I'm a 3-time entrepreneur, and I mean, wow, these people invited me up here to talk about politics and never spoken at a political event either. But when I was called on this, it's something that I'm actually very, very passionate about. And, you know, kind of going back in time, when I graduated college, you know, I went out and started a company, and I was in the right place at the right time. It was 1994 when the internet was getting going. So did extremely well and built a beautiful home here in San Diego and Rancho Santa Fe, and, you know, was married and had a couple kids, and, you know, then got bored, so started another company, and second company did extremely well, and we ended up selling to Goldman Sachs, and, you know, tried to move my family away from here a couple times, but the wife said it'd be nice visiting on weekends. So, so I get to commute back and forth to Silicon Valley. I actually landed at 120 and you know, shot over here. But we have a group of employees here in San Diego, and you know, something I'm very passionate about actually is redefining San Diego as America's mobile city, right? You know, it might be America's finest city, but we are mobile, right? And there's so much mobile talent here, and but you know, getting to kind of what is at hand. I'm a very aggressive entrepreneur. You know, I was an airborne ranger, and I don't like taking no for an answer. So I got called about 4 years ago from a buddy of mine, and his name is Troy Carter. And Troy Carter had been in the entertainment business and said, you know, Matt, I want to go to Silicon Valley. I mean, I don't think you really knew what it was, but I said, okay. So we got on Southwest Airlines, and we flew up to Silicon Valley, and we sat down with a number of different tastemakers, one of them being a woman named Ellen Siminoff, who you know, did TCP/IP, was basically the basis of what's now the internet, and at UCLA with Vint Cerf, and we sat down with Marissa Mayer, who's now Yahoo, but at the time she was Google, but what became very apparent was that things were changing. This was when Facebook was just getting going, and we had some stuff. But when we returned, he said, "Matt, I want you to be my arms dealer." Okay. So my job for the past 4 years has been to bring Lady Gaga forward with technology and power that technology. And what we've learned from it is how to organize people, and how to organize people around interests, affinities, and movements. And what you can do with technology and organizing people is you can have your own army, right? We have little monsters, okay?
Very scary.
Yeah, and it's about 100 million strong now. But what we're interested in is we're interested in that 1%, right? Because those are the 1% of the people that are willing to do the work. And I'd be willing to bet that most of you all are 1%ers, right? So now, kind of transitioning to what some of our pain is that we have been building a system, and what the system does is it qualifies and quantifies. So it says that person's a very good organizer, that person's a great content creator, that person's a voyeur, they just want to sit over in the corner and watch. But it organizes them around a number of different theories, and one of them we actually went and studied the church. So the church welcomes you into church and says, welcome to my church, and the next thing they want to introduce you to the minister, but there's a whole process. And if you can synthesize and syndicate that with technology, you can do some really great things. And it's funny, I saw Joe earlier today, and I said, "Hey, Joe, I'd really like to learn about politics because, you guys know how to spend money, that's for sure." And to organize. But no. So we have engineers in the Valley, okay? And we're approaching 30 engineers. And, we have lots of recs out there. And I'd like to hire engineers here, but, we interview, 10 folks a week. And, we can't find the people to do the jobs. So we started going, we went to Illinois has been a great place to recruit out of. We've got some guys from MIT. We've got some guys actually from Canada. But there was a really great little kind of pocket of people that we found, and engineers we found, and they're in Croatia, okay? And when you're developing, you need your developers all in one place, right? If you're trying to do this stuff with outsourcing and contract, you're toast. So we started recruiting these guys, and we got some J1 visas for them, okay? After a year, my guy Eric, who's sitting in the audience right now, calls me up and he says, "Matt, we got to send some of them home." And that was really painful, okay? So then we got some H1, I think one of our guys, no, two of them actually have H1s now. But what did I end up doing? I go to Croatia every once in a while. 3 weeks ago, I did 700 miles on the ground in Croatia. And what Croatia has done is they've actually, after communism and everything, they built these schools, and the schools are centered on exactly what we need here, okay, and our engineering talent. And these guys are beasts. They power our back end, so as we can scale data and we can study data, I can tell you how many people logged on, who went to the concert, who didn't go to the concert, who bought the merchandise, who didn't buy it. I can tell you who tweeted about it, who is negative, who's positive. All these things are very, very important. It's like it's a data mining experiment, and these guys are able to do that. The thing that's very frustrating to us as a startup is when we go head-to-head with these larger companies, and I won't name one of them, but I went head-to-head for a very strong product guy, and this guy signed his agreement and everything, and next thing you know, he's a Canadian guy, and he came back and he said, they're going to get me a green card. How do you negotiate that with that, right? So, but our goal is to truly change the world and connect people around their interests. And you might say, well, why aren't you Facebook or that? Well, Facebook connects you around the people you already know, and that's very important. But what we found is that people are defriending people faster than they're friending them because they want to be around people they wish they knew, right? So, I could kind of cover the whole social ecosystem, of what's happened and, why you saw Zynga come up and go down. And we study this. Professor Fowler here has been working with us. We've got a number of different people backing up what we're doing, but the foundation of everything that we can do and all this good that we can do and how we can connect people, is halted and held up by the lack of us being able to recruit good talent. And, if there is a way that it could be more transparent, and if there was, because I had 4 guys, they get this lottery, 2 of them got in, 2 of them didn't. Why? don't know. So I just think that it would help a lot to be more transparent, because what do? Well, we opened an office in Croatia, and I'm paying them over there now. So I got 2 guys here and 2 guys there, and we switch them back and forth. So they're paying, we're not paying taxes here, and to me it just seems very illogical. And so sorry to kind of ramble on, but these are real stories. This is really happening, and this is taking a lot of time and energy. I mean, do I need to go to Croatia and drive 700 miles and do all that regularly? No, they could be coming here, and we could be treating them in a different way. We also could be thinking about our universities and some of the programs and how we can onboard. People always talk about this place, Silicon Valley, and last year I got to go to Russia and meet with, at the time it was President Medvedev, and we built this really cool tool, and it's a translation tool. So what we did is we took, and this was built in a hackathon on a weekend, right? So we started translating, and what happened was Lady Gaga was in Brazil, and she wanted to talk to her fans in Brazil, and she couldn't. So we took Google Translate, and we started looking at the differences of chat. So like the LOLs and number 4s, well, what does that mean across languages? So we started doing that and then studying. So we translated forwards, backwards, and forwards again. And what we found was that we actually improved Google Chat by like double-digit percentages. So we can now do asynchronous translation in 58 languages. You can, say hello or use this back and forth real time. So Gaga can go out and talk to her people, or anyone could be using it. I went and presented at the UN. But when I went to Russia, their biggest fear is, how can this be used against them? But where I'm going with this is that technology is going to bring the world together, and it's going to bring the world together around multiple different touch points. So hopefully we can bring the world together a little bit here. And I don't understand anything about politics. Yes, I voted, but usually it's all one side. Probably should learn more. So sorry to sound a little immature or unfounded, but these are real stories. So thank you for having me today.
Okay. Hi, Diego Berdakin. I'm a founder of a company called BeachMint. Serial entrepreneur. I've started several companies. I had a brief 2-year stint working for a quirky Australian man named Rupert Murdoch, and I started 4 companies for him. And now I run this company called BeachMint, but at the same time, I'm also a professor at the University of Southern California. And what I think is interesting is actually, if you look at the absolute number of engineers we've graduated in the United States since 1980, it's basically flat on an absolute basis, but we've doubled the number of college graduates. So, you're seeing this kind of huge growth in the need for technology jobs, and a reality which is it's hard to get a STEM education, right? It's a lot of work, and increasingly people take kind of the path of least resistance. So while in Silicon Valley you have, I think at the moment, 200,000 open job recs for engineers, and maybe that's just broadly the technology industry in California, you have a really limited supply. So, in my view, at least personally, while I'd love to go into colleges and kick people's asses and tell them they have to take the harder road and get engineering jobs, so we can hire our own graduates, the affordability of Funyuns and the legalization of marijuana probably will not will not curb the number of English majors in the near future. I'm happy I have at least one fan. So, it's just a reality we're facing. We're not going to we're not going to magically get people to become engineers. And there are a lot of really good initiatives. Joe's partner in Ford US, Mark Zuckerberg, is also a proponent of something called Code.org, which is a great initiative trying to bring coding into the preschools and kindergartens. And I think it's something we can all get behind. A lot of great things that are emerging in that space. I think if you look 10, 15, 20 years in the future, hopefully long-term we'll solve some of those problems. But the reality is we have challenges today as we try to compete in a global economy. And we're in desperate need of engineering talent that we don't have, and the only way to get access to it is to tap people internationally or domestically. I mean, a lot of these people are coming to the United States. They're getting PhDs here. They're getting degrees, and they're not able to stay in this country for a variety of reasons. And I think that's something, obviously President Obama has been pretty vocal about. He said famously, let's staple a green card to every PhD that we give out in this country. And I think it's something that we're all kind of big supporters of. So I think that, I've had a lot of people with H-1Bs. There's all kinds of weird idiosyncratic things about them. You can't give people promotions because when their job titles change, they actually need to reapply for an H-1B. It creates all these perverse incentive structures where you actually don't want to be better at your job because it puts you back at the bottom of the queue. And you have to wait 7 years till you're kind of ready for citizenship. And it's just really a backward system that wasn't made to help us be competitive. And all these other countries we're competing against, there's a couple German brothers named the Samwar brothers. They're very famous for being the kind of best cloners in the world. They take American companies and they bring them overseas. They started a Groupon competitor. In basically 9 months, they sold back to Groupon for 20% of their company and netted them like $2 billion. They started eBay Europe. They're doing, I think it's like 60 different companies. And these guys, they're kind of some of the biggest exploiters of this arbitrage of human capital. They wait for people to graduate from American universities who can't stay in this country. They hire them, and then they go throw them in Brazil and say, okay, you're starting Groupon Brazil, or you're starting eBay Brazil. And the reality is that as kind of time goes on, I think you're going to continue to see that technology is such a high leverage industry that it's less people do more things. We're going to continue to have this kind of systemic unemployment if we don't really invest hugely into the knowledge economy. And then from a personal level, and just the kind of anecdote there is, I have students. I actually strangely teach at the film school at USC, even though I don't have a film background. But I have students ranging from game design to engineering to film students. And last year, I saw kids graduating, and you have guys who were graduating with graduate degrees from the best film school in the world, trying to get jobs in mailrooms, making $32,000 a year, and undergraduates who are 22 years old, leaving with a game design and engineering background and getting $150,000 job offers from places like Zynga. I mean, it's real. If there is a need in this market, and the kind of clearing prices for talent in STEM are really, really high because it's a high leverage, ROI positive, impact to those companies. And our ability to let other people in from participate in our economy is hugely ROI positive. And I think every study I've ever seen around immigration, high tech is very, very much supports that point. And then on a personal level, my parents are both immigrants. They both came from Argentina. They were fortunate, unfortunate, it depends on the way you look at it, to have kind of found a back door into the into the legal American kind of citizenship, which is, Argentina went through a kind of military regime called the junta, and my dad was both my parents are highly educated. My dad is a surgeon. My mom is an aeronautical engineer, and my dad was in jail because he didn't share the same kind of political beliefs as the government. And my mom's brother had a very similar problem, so they both came here to the United States, where they met, and because their country they came from had a lot of political turmoil, it wasn't hard to get citizenship. But it's kind of like, unless the country you come from is really messed up, we don't want you. Like, if you come from a totally stable and normal country like Canada, do not come here. And it's sad, it's funny, I guess, and it was great for them. And they're obviously, both entrepreneurs, both built awesome companies here in the United States, employed tons of people. I think we're hugely, effective in being participants in the economy. And I think, their story is something that doesn't exist anymore. The opportunity to be an immigrant, come to this country, and make that kind of change. I mean, if you look at Fortune 500 companies, I think it's something like 50% of them were started by immigrants, or the children of immigrants. And that's something we're going to lose out on if we aren't smart, because it used to be that everyone wanted to come to the United States, and now increasingly you're seeing Chinese people come to the United States, get educated here, and go back, because it's just, we're becoming less competitive. So anything we can do to lower that friction, to get the smartest people in the world to come back here is something we have to do. I think it's imperative. And if we don't do it in the next year to 5 years, we're going to really fall behind in this kind of global talent war.
All right. First of all, I'd really like to thank the panelists for sharing their practical experiences that really kind of bring this home in terms of why it's important that we have immigration reform, and especially on the STEM and H-1B visa side, and also with Scott's day-to-day experience in D.C. and what's happening in the trenches there. We've got a little bit of extra time on the agenda, so Joe, I was first going to offer you a little time if you've got. I know you weren't a formal member of the panel in terms of commentary, but I'll offer you some time if you want to comment on some of the things we've heard before we go on to questions.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of folks have made the point, and the economic research we've seen is that everyone who comes in on an H-1B creates 4 to 5 other American jobs. And Matt talking about folks he'd like to have here who are instead overseas. They're consuming overseas. They're eating at restaurants. They're paying their rent overseas instead of here. And I really think we're sort of at this existential moment as a country where immigration is in many ways one of our greatest strengths in a global economy, which is that our identity as a nation of immigrants allows us to culturally absorb people. I mean, Germany and France and all these countries have real immigration problems. They have immigration riots. And it is not to say that we're perfect, but we're really good. It's like one of our real strengths at bringing people in and helping them to become Americans. I was with Representative Joe Crowley the other day, who's the representative from Queens, and said, "I'm from Queens, we make Americans." So that was a great line. They come here, we turn them into Americans, and then they move out to the suburbs. And I think that, and this is really, just to get beyond a moment, beyond sort of the strictly high skill visas, I think that, my ancestors, my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents came over from Eastern Europe and, were not educated. But I think that, there was a moment where somebody, my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, were being attacked by Cossacks and decided, we're going to leave the village we've never been more than 2 miles from to go to a country we've never even seen a photo of, and take a train and a steamship. And I had the privilege of being at Ellis Island yesterday on this trip with a bunch of congressmen. And it's really powerful, sitting there and imagining, everything. You could bring one bag and you're in the bottom of a steamship for 3 weeks. And to be willing to do that, there's a certain amount of chutzpah to that. There's a certain amount of character that I think shapes America. That the fact that, we are the wretched refuse, right? We are the people who said, look, we're gonna go for a better life, and that's what it means to be an entrepreneur. And us as entrepreneurs believe that, and that's not just about someone coming for computer science. That's somebody, who's here working 3 jobs, cleaning your hotel room and picking your crops and building your homes. We have a lot of respect for that, and there's a lot of dignity in that, and that's something that we believe makes us strong as a country, and that we want to celebrate and not punish. And so I think that's, why us as a tech community, and folks have asked, why does Mark Zuckerberg, why does Bill Gates care about this? Is this just about H-1Bs? And it really isn't. It's about, who we are as a country and our identity as entrepreneurs. And I think it's really been great to see the tech community come together. I mean, to have this amazing crowd here to talk about this issue and how important it is. And, you look at the group of allies you've got from the U.S. Chamber of Congress and the Southern Baptist Convention and the tech community all coming together around this issue is really inspiring to see.
All right, we've got a great set of questions here that actually are on both sides in terms of the immigration issue, and some are technical and some are political. So we're gonna go through some of these, and I think it's going to make for some interesting discussion. But I'm going to throw one out myself for starters, if I can, and that goes to the. Yeah, I can do that, Wendy. You're right. So, in the life science community, one of the things that we see at BIOCOM constantly, week to week, month to month, is that we are always getting dozens and dozens of new member companies joining our organization. Early stage new companies that are being created out of technology that comes out of the research institutes here on the base of the universities, UCSD, San Diego State, Cal State San Marcos, all of our universities in the area. So it seems to me that given the fact that we've got this ability to turn intellectual property and technology into companies, that there shouldn't be any shortage of a need to have people who have the skills technically and from a business standpoint to run these companies and to work in these companies. So I've got a couple of questions here that go to, do we really need to increase the number of H-1B visas, and especially on the STEM side? Do we really need that increase? Is there really demand out there? And both Matt and Diego kind of alluded to this in terms of the experiences you've had. But let me start with Congressman Peters and move down the line and maybe expand a little bit on that question.
I thought someone quoted the stats, so I'm going to leave it to you guys. But that's all I hear from the tech folks is that for us to compete worldwide in any competitiveness study, what makes the United States competitive in the next decades and century? It's about having the ability to have the talent here that we need, and we're not generating it, I think, as you mentioned. So, but someone had numbers.
Yeah, I mean, using kind of anecdotal, I mean, I can give you the real numbers, but I think it's more interesting to think of it at kind of like really qualitative level. Like, I was just in Berlin looking at a company that is kind of very similar to what my company does, and they have engineers leaving the best universities in Germany, obviously a great education system, German citizens, and a really strong economy. But because of the fluidity of labor in that market, they're able to pay engineers something like $70,000 a year, and for a comparable engineer in Silicon Valley, it might be $150,000 a year. And it's really hard for our companies to be competitive with that, right? How do you go head to head? And we have a huge head start. So at the moment, you're not really seeing the pains of having to compete head to head with people that are willing, for other first world countries with great infrastructure and stable political systems and all the other great stuff you need in order to build a robust tech community. I'm not saying we have to compete with Bangladesh on prices, but because there's such an imbalance of supply and demand, the equilibrium price keeps ticking higher and higher and higher. And luckily, American technology companies are doing really, really well, right? You have Google, Apple, Amazon, all these guys just continuing to create more and more and more value, and continuing to need more and more and more engineers in order to create that value. I only see that price going up until we figure out some way to really systematically bring in more engineering talent.
I don't have any stats or anything. I mean, it's something that I learned today, though, is that you said that we haven't graduated more engineers since 1980.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but I think everybody in the room probably has a phone in their pocket and a laptop or tablet. And let's think about technology. I mean, Moore's law doubles, and continues to double. And we think about, let's just take a text message, right? In 1993, the first text message was sent. Yesterday, 4 times the amount of text messages than there are people in the world. So it just would seem common sense that if you're just flatlining your amount of graduates in that space, there's something wrong.
I think the criticism you often hear, or the kind of the other side of the argument, is that, well, you're taking American jobs. There are enough folks that are here. And I think that belies a sort of very zero-sum view of the economy, a very sort of mercantilist view of the economy, that anytime someone comes from another country, you must be taking an American job. And I think the way to understand the way tech companies view engineers is that, a great engineer might be 5,000 times more productive than an okay engineer. And so companies have a threshold. We had an event at Y Combinator a few weeks ago, which is a tech incubator in Silicon Valley, and Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, who's one of our funders at Ford US, was talking about how in marketing and sales, they have a certain number of job recs out, but in engineering, there's no cap. As long as somebody meets the bar, they will hire them. But they have to meet the bar, and they would rather hire no one than to hire someone below that bar. And so that's what you're seeing. And you see companies, and the rules that are in place, and they're even being strengthened in the Senate bill to make sure that, somebody on an H-1B is paid the same as someone who is doing a similar job. And the tech companies actually are really pushing for making sure those employees have more protections, like they have more time that they can go between jobs on their H-1B, that they can get their green card faster. And I think there's this distorted view that like somehow this is like wage slavery or something, which could not be further from the truth. I mean, these are companies that have sand volleyball courts and 3 meals a day. And I think that what we've seen companies go to great lengths. There's this trend that's happening where a lot of tech companies are opening these offices in Vancouver, which they call holding pens. So literally what they're doing is they're getting folks that they want to bring in to their offices in California, and they can't get their visa, so they put them in Vancouver because it's on the same time zone, and because Canada has much more amenable immigration laws. And then they sit there, and in fact, they have to take employees from California and send them to Vancouver to work with and supervise those folks. So actually removing Americans to work in Canada. And Canada is not lying down. There's a billboard right now on the 101 South on the way to SFO from San Francisco, with a big Canadian maple leaf on it. And it says, visa problems? Bring your company to Canada, new startup visa. And the Canadian immigration minister was in San Francisco a couple months ago. And so, our enemies to the north are, just kidding. So I think, we are in this all-out global war for talent, and we have this huge advantage that America is by far the most popular destination. When you pull people around the world, we're where people want to be. But that's not necessarily going to be the case forever, and it's something we really need to take advantage of.
Yeah, and just to that point, just a quick anecdote, there's actually a very famous investor, this guy Peter Thiel, that is a prominent investor, has built a barge. This is true, like a little island, like a barge off the coast of San Francisco, far enough to be into international waters, so that you can send engineers there and commute there by boat. This isn't a joke. This is crazy.
It's called seasteading.
Yeah, seasteading. This is crazy. We're building barges off the coast of San Francisco to hold.
It's a 30-minute commute to actually come on shore.
Okay, I don't know.
It is.
Yeah, I'm saying this. I'm just saying. I think we've.
But I mean, there used to be an island off of the coast of California. It actually was a Cortex bank. They were trying to make an island over there by burying stuff. I mean, that doesn't last very long. I mean, especially with CIA and NSA and stuff. But coming back to that, if you guys think about engineers, and I think that a lot of people, there's some kind of misconceptions, but think about if you're sick, right? You want to go to a great doctor, right? Someone that's been really well trained and going to perform surgery or that what so forth. Or think about an architect, right? A lot of these guys, they really are architects, right? They're building these huge systems, right? And if they're going to go build, some large building, I mean, it takes some serious technical expertise. It's not something you just learn or pick up, coding. And Mark Zuckerberg is known as being this great engineer. If you talk to a lot of engineers, he's a great visionary, but like his engineering skills are not the strongest engineering skills. So the people that are supporting us from the engineering standpoint, I mean, this is a very technical, very high skill job. And I multiple times have gone with the engineers and learned some coding, and it's not easy. So.
All right, I wanted to do that because I kind of wanted to lay the case for the next step here, which is a little discussion about where we go from here and how we can make something happen and accomplish something here, whether we're talking about comprehensive immigration reform or the issue of H-1B visas. I know we've got a representative of Congressman Ice's office in the audience as well, and I want to mention that he's introduced a bill in the House, H.R. 2131, the Skills Act, which would actually increase in a separate piece of legislation the number of H-1B visas that would be made available to those with STEM educations. So that would set aside about 40,000 H-1B visas for those with STEM education. So let me throw something out to Scott for starters here. Does something like that have a chance?
Well, first of all, I think it would be great. I think it's a great thing. I probably would support it. I think it's going to have a hard time passing because, look, if you haven't noticed, the problem with Congress is that the Republicans and the Democrats aren't talking to each other. Anything we want to do is going to involve, whether it's immigration, passing a budget, getting rid of sequestration or furloughs, or tax reform, which I hope you guys will do next if we can do this. It involves sitting down around a table and working through things and listening to each other and what you want. The success of the Gang of Eight in the Senate came about because they became a team. And the Republicans said, look, I understand you need this path to citizenship. The unions or your backers need this, so we're going to support you on that. And the Democrats said, you know, we don't care that much about security, but we know that you need border security. That's an important part of the component of the bill. And as they worked together over time, it got to the point where the Republicans would say, well, no, we can't do that because the unions will never let you do that. And they became a team, and that's what we need. So the problem with this approach is that it takes one part of the equation and puts that out separately and might not get the support for the whole thing. So I think that's why comprehensive is so important. Now, I probably would vote for Congressman Ice's thing. It's so important to my district, but I don't think that's the best approach. I actually don't think it's the best bill for what you were saying, Joe. But also there's fiscal implications from the bill as presented comprehensively. The Congressional Budget Office says that the way the bill is drafted, if we pass the Senate bill, it would cut our deficit by $300 billion over the next 10 years. It would increase GDP by 3.3% over the next 10 years. And it would improve the Social Security's solvency. Now, why is that? If you think about the demographics, we're getting old, folks. And a lot of the immigrants who would be coming in, who might be working here today, but would be paying Social Security, would help the solvency of that whole system. So there's a lot of benefit to the comprehensive approach. Whether it would pass, I'm not sure, Joe. I think it's a good part of it. I think if I could get it, I would. But I think we can do better, and I really think that that's probably the way to passage.
Comprehensive. So one of the questions that's come up is why not take the issue of non-legal residents who are here, separate that from immigration reform, and get the needed votes to pass? I think I probably hear you saying that's not going to work either.
Well, again, like I said, it's part of the whole equation. I'll just tell you on the left, I have friends in the Hispanic caucus who are offended by the wall, and they don't want this anymore. And the idea that you would not provide a path to citizenship would offend them too. We might lose those votes. Myself, I have my own complaints about the wall. I have issues about the feasibility of the wall, and I talked to my friends at LRAD about whether you can actually build a wall over some of this terrain, or whether other technologies like a clear projected microphone that these guys build that tell people that we're seeing you with some surveillance might be better, rather than trying to build this enormous wall. But that's kind of where they got to. And if I could get STEM visas, if I could get a path to citizenship, and the price was an excessive, probably needless wall, I'd probably be supportive of it. But that's what compromise is.
I think also, I think there is real benefit to the comprehensive approach, as Congressman Peters was saying, and I think the Senate deserves some commendation for actually trying to tackle the whole thing. I think it's probably a little too rare these days in our Congress that there's actually an attempt to tackle the whole thing, and these things are interrelated, right? We've got a system now where we have a set of laws that we choose not to enforce, or not enforce particularly well, because they don't serve our economy, and so by fixing our legal immigration system, fixing our enforcement, and doing a path to citizenship together, I think there's a real attempt to fix the whole problem. And I think that we should be really supportive of that attempt.
So we've got 54, I believe, members of the delegation in the House from California. 53? Okay. I remember when I spent a lot more time on the Hill that when folks from Texas wanted to get something done, they all got together and they got it done. So why can't we do that? Shouldn't we be able to do that with our California delegation and our two senators?
I'm working on that. And by the way, one of the other reasons I appreciate Joe being down here from the north is we need to start to think in a more unified way of the California economy, which is built up of technology, the military, tourism here, but also trade through the Alameda Corridor, entertainment in Los Angeles, agriculture, and the Texans do a great job. They find a way to fight back and forth. They have their left-wingers and their right-wingers, but when there's money for a road, they vote for it. And so part of what is exciting to me about this is that we might have some Northern and Southern California coordination, but I think that's starting a little bit more.
I think we need to continue to make the case with our delegation that this is also becoming a global competitiveness issue on a day-to-day basis. And it's not just things like Matt saying, I'm going to open an office in Croatia because those guys have the skills in Croatia. When I go to Australia, the Australians tell me about their 40% R&D tax credit. So you go and do research in Australia, right off the top, you get a 40% tax credit. Just got back from France. The French told me about their 35% R&D tax credit and their $9,000 per employee hiring credit if you go over there and hire people to go to work there. We could talk about China for 2 hours and the sea turtles who come here that go back, spend time here in companies, and then go back and start companies that amazingly do similar things in China, where there's almost no intellectual property protection as well. So
Something that I've recognized though is that there's been a shift since 2008 and the economy and things, and before a lot of the I'm kind of one step removed from the younger the kids that are graduating college, but I graduated college with a lot of kids that were able to go and sell mortgages and work in the housing industry, and these guys were making $200, $250 a year, and Wall Street jobs. They're all gone, right? Like I get calls every week. How do I start over? How do I do that? And it's not easy, right? And my recommendation to those folks is take 2 years, plan on making nothing, right? Supporting your family, but no inbound income, and then you'll be able to make that shift. It's not like you can just do that. And if you're making $200,000, $250,000 a year, and all of a sudden you need to reinvent yourself, that's not easy. You're probably spending every last penny of it before you decide you're going to make that shift. So, I think expectations too, and what people expect. So you talk about like some of these lower paying immigrant jobs. I don't think people want to do them, right? And I don't have any of the stats, but the expectations of our workforce, and once people have things to take things away, I think hurts a lot more than not having it at all. So I think it's a lot more than just okay, we're going to issue this or do that. So you need to think about the complexities of it.
So what could we be doing to try to, Scott, I see the frustration, I hear the frustration, but but I think
Gosh, I'm not a politician.
and look, the fact that the Senate was actually able to do anything is amazing, that they were able to get a bill through. Of course, there are a couple of other bills that apply to us that they've actually passed too recently, so maybe things are beginning to happen on that side. But I think we're frustrated as well from the standpoint that we can't sit around and continue to live with this back and forth bickering and nothing happens. So what's the solution in terms of our engagement?
Let me give us some explicit optimism. My tone tends to be less cheerleadery, but actually I think that this is a real possibility for the Congress, and immigration might be the issue that breaks the logjam. As I said, I think this August people are going to hear. They're going to hear from farms, businesses, churches, hotels that this is important, and I think we might find a way to make this happen. So I'm actually looking forward to September and October. I think unfortunately we often Congress, and I've only been there 7 months, but tends to wait for the crisis to do something. That's not atypical of government anywhere, but that's particularly true in Congress. They let it get really bad. But this issue is going to be forced in the fall. The House is going to take up separate parts of immigration. They'll probably pass 3 or 4 different bills that address parts of it, and then it might go to a conference. We'll go through a kabuki dance, and maybe we'll have the chance to vote on something. But I do believe that immigration is the big thing that's most likely to happen. And if you all participate, and with the help of Forward, that we might send that message through and get something going. I think clearly it's how this Congress will be judged by how we do on immigration, I believe.
Okay. Try to be fair about questions here from the audience. So before I've got one big one here, but let's go to a couple of these other ones that I think are related. First of all, when a question came in that asked, who's out there lobbying against immigration reform? And we talked a little bit about, you know, what's happening in the House itself with members, but what's the opposition? Who is the opposition? And how can we impact the opposition?
Well, I think one thing that's first important to say is that this is an issue that the vast majority of Americans are supportive of. We put out a poll a couple weeks ago from a fellow named John Lerner, who is the chief strategist for the Club for Growth and probably about the sort of most respected sort of Tea Party strategist around. And his poll showed that only about 20% of Republican primary voters are against immigration reform and against the path to citizenship. And even encouragingly, folks say they'd rather an imperfect solution to no solution. So that's very hopeful, and a lot of the message we're spreading is that there's actually a lot more support than people may think. One of the largest groups is a group called Numbers USA. It's a pretty scary group. They are a population control group, advocate for things like sterilization. So, I mean, they're kind of wacky people. But it's a loud vocal minority. And so one of the things we're very focused on, as Representative Peters was alluding to, is the month of August, congressmen go home because D.C. is a putrid swamp that you want to escape in the month of August. And they go home, and it's really important that they hear from their constituents support for immigration reform, because the opponents tend to be very loud and vocal, even though they are a small minority. And a lot of folks remember back to 2009 with the healthcare debate, and a lot of folks went home and had a really tough time of it. And so the goal is that this August, and that's one of the things we're working on forward, is making sure that folks hear from, you know, all kinds of folks. And there's lots of groups working on it. It's not just us. To really help that sort of quiet majority of folks that support immigration reform make sure that their members hear from them.
I'd say, just to add, all the polling we've seen is that people support an immigration policy that's tough, in that, you know, we're not having drugs, people, or guns smuggled across the border. That's fair to taxpayers. That's why we're very careful to talk about earned citizenship. I mean, and people have to go through a lot of process in this bill. And that's practical. I mean, people understand that these 11 million people who are undocumented are part of the workforce, and they just want a solution. So I think that's true. I'll just tell you what, in terms of who's against it, you know, I have a friend who I work out with at the gym in the morning, who's a Republican representative from the Midwest, in a pretty safe Republican seat. And he said, I said to him before the July 4th week, I said, are you going to go home and hear about immigration? The Senate had just been taking this up. And he says, oh yeah. He said, the two biggest issues in my district are guns and amnesty. And so he's still facing that nomenclature. He says, I'm already in a little bit of trouble because I was for background checks. And he was concerned that his senators didn't vote for the Senate bill, so he had lost his cover. But I think part of it is that there's a lot of just fear that may not be justified among many people out there that this is a dangerous thing for them. So that's part of your effort too, is to make sure that they're educated and buffered.
Okay. I'm going to shift to be fair to everyone in the audience. There's a side of this that says, why are we trying to bring more foreign workers here? Why are we trying to open up opportunities for foreign workers when we have a perfectly adequate number of people and a perfectly skilled workforce here trained in STEM to fill the jobs? We've got one person in the audience who's actually provided data from a study here to show apparently that we're creating more opportunities for foreign workers and fewer opportunities for STEM students, and discouraging STEM students from going into the IT field. And as in a related question that we can attach to this, are we doing enough to educate kids in grade school to be able to have that flow of students into STEM careers, high school, being trained to go into or learning in high school at a level where they're able to go into STEM programs at the university level as well? So whoever wants to start, I'll throw that out to all of you.
And I think on the STEM education part, I think all of us feel like that's something that should be a much larger priority. My father's a math professor, and he retired last year, and I was at his retirement dinner, and we sort of realized that among the faculty under the age 50, almost none of them had gone to high school in the United States, which is not a good thing. I mean, it's great that we're getting really good people from around the world, but we're also clearly not doing a great job educating folks. And we think these issues are intimately related. One of the pieces of the Senate bill, and something that a lot of the tech community has been very supportive of, is increasing the fees for H-1Bs and using that money for STEM education, because I think they're intimately related, and that we need to, over the longer term, we need to do a better job educating. We also need to attract the best talent from around the world, and that the two things are intimately related. I think we've already talked a lot about that issue of there being a real shortage of qualified folks, and that, I think the market bears this out, which is that, the H-1B laws today say you have to pay someone the same amount. And I think, and there are some abuses, and I think the Senate bill actually does a pretty good job of trying to address some of those with some of the outsourcing firms. But that, it's much easier to hire someone who already lives in America. And if we can find folks that are qualified, we're absolutely going to do that. When my first company, Causes, we were 30 people and already had 7 people on visas, not because that was like preferred and those people didn't make any less money, but because we just couldn't find folks. I even, and you have folks opening offices overseas, not to save money, but because they can't find folks here. Matt, you want to add?
Sure. I have 3 kids, okay? 7, 9, and 12. And they're 3 boys. My wife's an entrepreneur. She actually started a company here in San Diego that manufactures eyewear for looking at your computer. And she's starting our garage. She's just doing unbelievable. But as I look around and I look at these kids, and for whatever it is, the fact that they were born here, they're very fortunate. Last week, I took my family over to an island. We went to Indonesia, island in Sumba. And until 5 years ago, 1 out of every 2 children died of malaria, right? People were just trying to stay alive. But my point in saying that is that for whatever it is, and with the fear of sounding ignorant, but there are some things that we're not doing right with the education. And, I'm very in touch with my kids' education, and, granted, they're going to a very good school, but how we motivate them and how we track them, if you look at what really made this country a great country, it was a lot of entrepreneurship. It was a lot of folks that really wanted to take risk and push forward. And there just seems to be some sort of demotivation. I don't have the answer, but just trying to make an overhead judgment there.
Yeah, and I think that, from my perspective, and Forward US is a consortium of basically just exclusively STEM companies. They're all technology companies that are looking to hire people, and I think every single one of those entrepreneurs and leaders is the same problem, which is finding more talent. So if there are studies that say that there is enough talent that exists, yeah, I could say that from my
I've got the numbers here that
Yeah,
I'd be glad
so
to provide to these guys afterwards.
from my experience, yeah. No, of course, we'd love to hear them. I would love to hear the numbers.
You guys want to hear the numbers?
Sure, I would love to hear them.
Okay. All right. In 2011, the number of high-skilled possessing at least a college degree guest workers was estimated to be equal to between 1/3 and 1/2 of the new job openings. Number of college-educated guest workers under the age of 30 in IT was equal to 2/3 of all of the 166,000 new college-educated IT job holders under the age of 30. According to the U.S. Government Accountability Office, the country's largest skilled guest worker H-1B program is primarily used to fill entry-level positions. Thus, recent graduates in the science, technology, engineering, and math fields seeking an initial foothold in the IT job market are competing directly with young college-educated guest workers. for these entry-level positions. If we more than double the supply of H-1B guest workers and create a new green card category for foreign-born STEM graduates, as both chambers of Congress have recently suggested, it will have a significant negative impact on both the long-term strength of the U.S. STEM workforce and the employment prospects for those entering college. Already, U.S. colleges graduate 50% more computer science majors than are able to find a job in IT. I find that remarkable because here in San Diego, we've got an incredible number of IT job openings that can't be filled. Anyway, these are, I have no idea who this is or what these numbers, stand up, but I'll throw them up.
I'll jump in and give you. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I can tell you some numbers from my business. I spend $25,000 on average to hire an engineer. That's a real cost of my business.
I think it costs us 35, right, Eric? What is it? Yeah. So
yeah.
And we pay that a couple times a month. So
yeah, and I spend probably, I think, and this is not a joke, it's $600 to place someone in customer care. So I can tell you where the jobs are and where the demand is. So I don't know where these numbers came from, but if you can find me. If you can save my business $30,000, $35,000 once a month, and I literally have recruiters calling me and saying, sorry, I can't do it for $20,000. So-and-so down the street is paying me $40,000 for every engineer I bring them. So that's the imbalance in the market. There's so few engineers that we have to go pay people it's a sum of money that could pay for an entire person's salary, a normal person's salary, just to go find an engineer who turns over so quickly because he has so many job offers that every year he gets a new job somewhere. So I spend $30,000, $25,000 every year and a half just to get new employees to fill this kind of constant churn of engineers. So if Rutgers is a magic source of engineers that we can all tap into, I'm really excited to find out about it.
Yeah, we have in our company. It's really funny. We pay our employees to find people. We pay, but let's talk about the bar that's set, right? So you walk into our company and you want to interview. The interview process so people understand that. First thing you do is you sit down with 5 different engineers, right? So across the organization, it has to be cultural fit. I mean, we have bunk beds in our office, okay? These kids are working, and it's funny. Our legal counsel's like, labor laws and things. I don't know if the bunk beds and the food match up with the labor laws, right? But in Silicon Valley, there's this weird energy, and I'd love to bring it down here. It'd probably be a lot less risk of losing these folks. But the next thing they do is they actually do this little game, and what the game is that you build an army, and our engineers have built this army, and you sit down, you code an army to attack our ant army, right? Because they want to think how these guys are thinking and the thought process and the strength of it. But I mean, the things that these guys are building, we have 400 million back-end connections, and how you scale and how you use these databases and how you organize them. Unbelievable. And then we're having to migrate them, and it's not that we can hire entry level. We look for people with significant experience, but it's unique of an individual. So we have got 20 job recs for engineers, and we'll hire as many as you brought us. But it's a very high bar, unfortunately. It's just a fact of life.
Yeah. I mean.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, so if the supply and demand is kind of classic economics, the supply and demand curves married up, we wouldn't have to spend as much money or time or energy as we do finding engineers. I'm a professor, so I know a lot about academia. I see these kids every single day. Kids who are graduating with engineering degrees are getting jobs instantly. They're getting 5 or 6 offers. They're getting offers from banks. They're getting offers from game companies. They're getting offers from Microsoft, Google, Zynga. These guys have unlimited hiring.
How many interns do we have this summer? 5 interns. We're paying them $5,000 a month? For interns. $4,000 to $5,000 a month, okay? And we paid for them to move out here. Yeah, $6,000 a month for an intern.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, there's probably someone who's written some literature somewhere in the world that contradicts what we see every single day in the real world. But I wish I could live in the same kind of reality distortion field that gave me infinite free engineers.
All right,
I
Scott,
mean,
I'm going to give Scott the final word on this one.
Well, the
then we're
market
gonna
tells a
turn to
story,
another
and I hear the same thing from everyone. So This is exactly the same thing I hear from folks in San Diego, and from you, Joe, and from Connect. And the answer is not either or, it's both. But clearly, we need to keep this business on shore. We need to keep America a good place to do business, a place that we're winning the competition for talent. And in the short term, that's going to involve H-1B visas. I don't think there's any doubt of it. And I agree, I think with the sentiment of the question is that we shouldn't let go of educating our own kids. And we can do a lot to strengthen education domestically for in STEM for the kids who are born here. It's both.
So we're wrapping up?
No, I've got one final
one more
question that goes directly to San Diego that's really important, but I'll let you chime in on this one.
At the end.
Okay. All right. We've got about 5 minutes here or so, and I want your help in tackling this one. And I know this one's near and dear to my friend Malin Burnham here as well. So one of the real richnesses here in San Diego is the fact that we've got a growing cross-border economy. And I know when I go down to Tijuana and see the number of companies that are working down there in the medical device arena, it's astounding, the skill base and the diversity and the as I said, the number of companies that are down there, and the increase also in the level of sophistication and training in engineering and other fields down in Mexico. So I know some of you guys aren't from San Diego, but I'll throw this out to everybody anyway. And that question is, how can we take better advantage of this cross-border economy in terms of utilizing the skills? And this goes directly to going back and forth across the border every day as well, and immigration reform, to take advantage of this richness that we have, not only in San Diego, not only at UCSD, but in universities in Tijuana and the growing technology sector in Tijuana.
Well, I would just say, I mean, it's, the question almost answers itself, but we have a tremendous, unique position in the world here, being on this border with Tijuana. And, you know, first and foremost is to see that there's a partnership, that we too often think of this as a threat, but it's a partnership. And when I was talking about trade too, it's not just the wall, it's the door. And there's a lot of communication and cooperation and things that we should be taking advantage of. And an opportunities on both sides of the border for growth. So to me, the one thing I would watch for in an immigration policy, as I said, and I know Senator Feinstein's looking out for this too, is let's not make this a barrier as much as let's really leave security to security. Security is important, but so is trade, and we can accommodate both. And I think for our region, that's the most important thing to remember.
Being a San Diegan now, I mean, going on 20 years, doesn't seem like I'm that old, but it's very interesting. And what I can tell you about a lot of the lower paid immigrants that are here, and you know, I spent $15,000 to go get visas for some folks that we brought from Cabo San Lucas that when we had a home there to work with us. And but a lot of the folks that I know, and this might be totally off, but I'm giving you real world things. I've been going home, and they haven't been getting jobs here. You know, I know our nanny that we've had for 13 years now. Her sister went home 2 years ago. Her brother-in-law lost his job. He was a landscaper at a condo complex, ran the whole thing, and they just went home. And I think it's a growing trend, and you know, people are very afraid of the border patrol and things, and even the legal ones. I mean, it's scary to them, right? So that's just, you know, one person's view on what is actually happening here. But you know, myself and my wife, we employ over 50 people here in San Diego. And you know, that's starting from nothing. Like, we didn't have businesses. You know, I came here with a Ford Escort, Pony, and a pinstripe on the side. That was it. Like 1994. Seriously. And over the years, I mean, I've built companies here, and I've had offices in UTC. I mean, we pay over $50,000 a month in rent here in San Diego. So we're supporting the economy. But what I can say is that, you know, we have to look at the universities. We have to look at it and study. And I can tell you, in Russia, when they had us come over, they have a thing called Skokovo there, and they were trying to, you know, model after Silicon Valley. And you know, there's something there, and it's not just in the water. So you know, just thinking a little bit rather than fighting with each other, and if we just step back and really think about what we're trying to achieve and just it just seems like common sense, and I don't understand any politics. I don't understand, there's a lot of lobbying and things that happen, and everybody, the Republicans and the Democrats want to have their views, but it seems that as a country, we'd want to come together, because I can tell you, when you travel around the world, everyone else wants to come here, right? And that's what we're talking about here, is keeping them out, but we have a pretty darn good country. So, and people want to complain about how bad it is, and we'll go other places and check it out and live there and spend some time. And when you come home, it's a really great feeling. So, I know I'm proud to be an American. I'm an airborne ranger. I was in the military. I served my time, and disabled veteran today. But I'm very proud of that. And if we could work together, and I know, hey, it might be some plea or whatever, but I'm pretty passionate about it.
I'm not from San Diego. I love the city. It's great. Come visit all the time. But I think one thing that's interesting, just a different perspective as an outsider, is you guys have a border with Mexico, and a lot of people see Mexico as kind of one of the great next investment opportunities. A lot of people talked about BRIC for a long time, and kind of the bloom has come off the rose with Brazil, and I think people recently have looked at Mexico as kind of the new Brazil, the kind of the great hope for Latin America, and a hugely growing economy, people who are becoming very affluent, and right now is in the middle of a lot of turmoil politically, but just like Colombia, that's now seeing some much better days, and a lot of stability and peace. You're probably 5, 6, 7 years out from that same kind of stability in Mexico, and I think, thinking about ourselves as exporters of intellectual property, into the world, there's no question that we should be looking at Mexico just as close as we look at Canada. I have a business where I design, develop, manufacture products and sell them all over the world, and we always think of Canada as our 51st state. We actually work with logistics companies called 51 State or something, because it's basically that easy. When you think about Canada, you're like, oh, it's the same thing. And there's a little bit of a language barrier. Other than that, no, I'm saying, other than that, the trade agreements, everything else, it's not like selling something into Brazil where you pay 100% tariff, right? It is very easy to do business in Mexico, but for some reason, people have natural kind of apprehension. And I think, I think that's something that if you looking at what can you do for the San Diego economy, what are the kind of perspectives that are interesting, I would say, I challenge people to look maybe to Mexico first, and not other geographies.
Joe, I'll give you a minute, and I'm going to turn it over to Tyler because we're out of time.
Yeah, so just to wrap up, would love, if you folks want to get involved forward, and we're working hard to try to engage folks. One little thing I wanted to ask you, I know we told you to put all your phones away. If you want to take your phones out, I think it's important that we show that people here in this constituency support our congressman for supporting immigration reform. So for those of you who have Twitter accounts, if you want to tweet at Rep. Scott Peters and thank him for supporting immigration reform. I know it seems like a little thing, but doing that publicly, I'm going to do it right now. Diego is too.
All right, with that, let me just thank the panel and all of you for your participation. I hope this was very informative to you, both from a practical standpoint, from a policy standpoint, and I hope we also got some ideas on how we can push some of this legislation forward and get you more engaged as well. Thank you for having me, Tyler, and with that, I'll let you close it out here.
Thanks. And Joe, we really appreciate you stepping in at the very last minute and bringing your knowledge of the issue to us. I think you were, really, really helpful to guide this panel. I'd like to thank Congressman Peters for really understanding the issues that the tech community and life science community in San Diego faces, and for being our voice in DC, but also coming back and sharing with great candor what's going on. I want to thank our panelists who have great stories and very much tales from the trenches perspective, which was very appreciated. And lastly, to Joe Green and Forward, we are thrilled that you're partnering with us. Thanks for being here, and we're really looking forward to working with you on subsequent issues. And thanks you all. There are refreshments just outside the room. And enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.